You're listening to The Source on Texas Public Radio. I'm David Martin Davies. Should San Antonio move its municipal elections? San Antonio Mayor Gina Ortiz Jones is making a case to have local elections in November, not in May. And she's joining us now to tell us why. And Mayor Jones, welcome back to The Source.
Hey there.
So our number is 833-877-8255, 833-TPR-TALK if you want to call in, ask a question and comment. So why move the elections from May, which is part of Fiesta, it's a Fiesta event, into November?
Well, to your point, straight off the bat, when it comes to NIOSA or voting, NIOSA always seems to win. But look, at the end of the day, this is about doing two things: saving our community money. By the city manager's estimate, moving it from May to November would save us between $800,000 and $1 million. And secondly, increased turnout. Now, this is all based on the premise that, when we hear from more of our neighbors, our government and our democracy works better. And earlier this year, there was legislation that passed, bipartisan support, by the way, that allowed municipalities who have a May odd year election to move it to November, still in the odd year. However, you have to do so by the end of the year, right? And so, honestly, how this came on my radar, I was reading the news in November sometime and saw that Dallas had passed the resolution to move their elections from May to November. They similarly are plagued by low turnout, and they had been trying to get this done for quite a long time, almost a decade. But the arguments are the same: saves money, higher turnout. If we do not do this, if San Antonio does not do this, we will be, of the top four cities, the only city who still has municipal elections in May. And again, the benefits are so clear. We, I think, should do this for ourselves. And I'm thankful that so many voting rights groups, folks that work on this issue day in and day out, know what this would mean for us. We've also gotten, again, the attention of national groups like Voto Latino that has weighed in and said they support this. League of Women Voters San Antonio supports this. Texas Organizing Project supports this. Southwest Voter Registration Project supports this. Thankful that 5 former mayors support this move: Henry Cisneros, Phil Hardberger, Nelson Wolf, Julian Castro, Ron Nurnberg. They all support it. Again, this is important for our community. Oh, by the way, if we don't get this done by the end of the year, we lose the opportunity to do this. Again, absent another change at the state level, which seems quite unlikely considering all the other major municipalities will have this already. So frankly, to where we started, though, shame on us if we, again, have an election during Fiesta. My goodness, right?
Right. So one issue people have said, there hasn't been enough time to get input from the community. So here's a good chance to do that. If you got a hot take on whether or not to move the municipal election from May to November, give us a call. Give us a quick call.
To that, yeah, and I will say, though, to that critique, when voting rights groups have weighed in, you have people like the Honorable Maria Berriozabal, the first Latina to serve on city council, has weighed in. You've got, again, lots and lots of community groups, West Side Historical Association, right? All these groups that have weighed in, not only maybe from a voting rights perspective, but also in terms of hey, this is good for working people perspective, right? Because folks associate voting with November. So I had a town hall this past weekend. I think there's at least one other town hall that is happening. Certainly, again, look forward to hearing from you, but the data is quite clear. Let me give you, here's a key piece of data. Houston, right? Houston is very similar to us in terms of demographics, socioeconomic, education level, income level, distribution, et cetera. And our turnout in state and federal elections is about the same. However, in municipal elections, their turnout is double. That's because their municipal election is in November. Ours is in May. So again, for us to be similar in two main types of elections, state and federal, and not in municipal, there the only difference being, again, the date we have our election, I think is a pretty demonstrative point that the date of the election matters.
So the number is 833-877-8255, 833-TPR-TALK. Give us a call. Does it matter to you? Do you think this is a good idea? Do you like voting in May? Tell us what you need. We need community input on where this needs to go. This is about you. This is about your election. Where do you want to have it, in May or November? So it's important to point out we're talking about doing this in the odd number years.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the legislation is very clear that this only applies to municipalities that have their municipal election in May of an odd year. And so by moving it to November of an odd year, it keeps the nonpartisan nature to the election, right? Because there's not any other partisan races on the ballot. The only thing you have on there are those constitutional amendments, which, I mean, frankly, by the way, are largely driven themselves by special interests. So I think having higher turnout for that election as well, and weighing in on those amendments is also a benefit of this.
Yeah, so it would be if this goes through, it would be November 2029.
Correct.
Okay, so we have congressional races and presidential races and all these other things in even number
Correct.
Years.
That's right.
So you're not going to be competing for the mind space with these other things going on.
That's correct. Right. The benefit here is that we don't do exactly what you just said. So, right, this still keeps it nonpartisan. However, we tap into that part of people's brains that understand that voting is in November.
But you're going from a Saturday election in May to a Tuesday election in November. Does that have an impact?
Well, again, you associate it with what people know, right, which helps increase turnout, which is a good thing. The more that we can hear from our neighbors, the more in which turnout can be representative of the population, I think we're all the better.
So what's the timeline on getting this done before the end of the year?
So we're having a B session this Wednesday, and so this is where we'll hear various presentations on it, and then we will vote on this on the 18th. So it's really important to reach out to your council member. If you agree with one, saving money, and higher turnout, please reach out to your council member to let them know where you are on this.
And typically we have about 10% participation in municipal elections in a good year.
In a good year.
And then what we just saw with the statewide, we had about 16% turnout for the constitutional amendments in November. So that's a big difference. It
is a big difference, and what's on the ballot matters, right? Some folks will point to, some higher turnout in certain May elections, but that's when you had the charter. That's when you had the bond, right? So what's on the ballot matters, but the timing of the elections also very much matters.
So let's go to Eva on the phones. And Eva, you're on the air with Mayor Jones.
Hi there. Thanks for having me on there. So my idea or my question is, overall, it's a good idea, very efficient, saves money. That's a big, big plus right there. But the money that we're saving by doing this, what are you going to do with that money?
Yep. No, really good question.
Thank you, Eva.
Yeah, so really good question. There are a number of priorities to which this could go to in our community. I think you've heard me talk a lot about, kind of the budget gap that we've got. And so as often and in as many ways as we can save resources by being more efficient with our resources, we should do that. So I look forward to, another discussion, to your point, about how we can best utilize the savings as a result of this change.
So you have a tabletop exercise coming up? Well, tell me about that.
Yeah, so I can't help my background in military planning, and we always use things, we call them war games. Here we're calling them a tabletop, but they're very useful in helping kind of play out scenarios and answer questions that kind of keep us up at night, right? And so with all that's happening at the federal level, funding cuts, the implementation of the One Big Beautiful Bill, which will implement cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, CHIP, and SNAP, I wanted the city staff to help the council understand what these cuts mean, not only from a financial standpoint, but also from a services standpoint to our community. We get about $150 million each year in federal funding into our budget, a lot of that in the public health space. About half, actually, of the public health budget comes from federal funding. So the potential loss in that, on top of any expedited implementation, but even expedited implementation of the One Big Beautiful Bill, we need to help think through that as we are thinking about our own budget in FY27, for which already there is a $150 million gap. So the point of the exercise is to answer, again, look at those questions that keep us up at night. If we lost this amount of money, and oh, by the way, there was, let's say, misinformation or disinformation around some public health thing, right? How would we react to that? I think this is important. Public health, I mean, we all remember COVID. Public health is an area where we are the least resilient. So understanding the impact of these cuts, not only to us, if we're getting cuts, you're seeing them at the county, and you're seeing them among our community partners. So this is an exercise to help us understand what assumptions are we making, how can we better prepare ourselves, and if we do have to make changes in our budget, how do we understand the impact on those as we look at some of those changes potentially falling on those who are themselves going to see cuts in Medicare, Medicaid, CHIP, and SNAP. This is all about being strategic and pragmatic in our planning.
833-877-8255, 833-TPR-TALK. Give us a call. Would you think San Antonio should move its elections from May to November? When we come back, I want to hear about your trip to Mexico City, out there trying to help San Antonio grow its businesses. This is The Source on Texas Public Radio. We'll be back with Mayor Jones right after this.
Support for The Source podcast comes from UT Health San Antonio, South Texas' largest academic research institution, where what is discovered in its labs translates into life-changing patient care. More at uthealthsa.org.
As 2025 comes to a close, the value of trustworthy journalism has never been greater. TPR remains dedicated to delivering real, reliable, trustworthy news. We are proud to be here for you, and today, we need you to be here for us. Without federal funding to help shoulder the costs, your support is essential on the road ahead, and we're counting on you. Visit tpr.org to make your end-of-year gift today.
You're listening to The Source on Texas Public Radio. I'm David Martin Davies. With us in the studio, San Antonio Mayor Gina Ortiz Jones. She's taking your questions and calls. One big question we're looking at is, should we move the election in May, the city election, which always happens during Fiesta, should we move it to November? And it seems like there's a lot to be decided there. And what do you think? 833-877-8255. You just got back from Mexico City. Mayor Jones, tell me about that trip.
Well, I really appreciate the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber putting that together. That was my first international trip, so very honored to lead that delegation. I think it's important, one of our most important relationships when it comes to history, of course, and cultural and the economy. And we had a good set of meetings, both with elected officials as well as with the business community. And two issues really came top of mind there. One, we will have soon here a review of USMCA, right? This critical trade deal.
That's NAFTA 2.0.
That's exactly right. And obviously, we're a major beneficiary of that. I mean, all the work that Toyota Texas, as so many of the other automotive suppliers, would really impact them. And I mean, to give people a scale, right, of the importance of that deal, USMCA is worth $1.93 trillion. $930 billion of that is just between the U.S. and Mexico, right? 30% of the world's GDP is made up by these three countries, the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. So as we know, NAFTA has been really important for our economy, will continue to be so, continue to do so. So I think it's really important that we are, shaping that conversation in a way that helps people understand the need to reduce trade barriers, frankly, as well as think about how we might use the trade, that opportunity, that relook, to address even some of the issues that some of the Mexican electeds brought up, right? Whether you're talking about environmental protections, certainly labor protections, but even gender equity. Right. Frankly, having served at the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative previously, there's a lot that we can help advance in our agendas through trade. And so this relook is important, and largely because of the economic consequence for our community.
Let's go to a caller, Maria. And Maria, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor Jones, for this wonderful suggestion to have this opportunity for teachers in the classroom to work with students about the importance of local issues. They will begin to associate November as the time when you go to the polls to make important decisions. So I surely hope that this effort is successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Let me build on that point. One of the groups that this would disproportionately help is, in fact, young people. What are people doing in May? If they're not thinking about Fiesta, they're probably thinking about their finals, right? Or they're coming upon the end of the year. And so one of the advantages I've also heard about November is that it allows for greater participation in the electoral process itself by young people. So I think there are a number of advantages to doing this. And frankly, as many of our college sites are, in fact, voting sites, we can help ourselves in a number of ways.
There is a new state law that is now in effect here, which they call it the bathroom bill. That's not a very good name for this, but I have to use it in order for people to maybe recognize what I'm talking about. It was a bigoted bill against people who are transgender, about saying they have to use the bathroom that of the sex that they were assigned to at birth. How is this impacting San Antonio?
So thanks for raising this. This is a bill that applies to all public facilities, right? So county and city owned. And right now, so absent facilities owned by SAWS and CPS, which themselves are city owned because we own those utilities, there's about 300 facilities city owned that are impacted by this, to include, oh, by the way, the airport, the convention center, the Alamo Dome. So, when I read about the implementation of this, my real concern is how this could affect our competitiveness for conventions, right? I mean, if people are concerned, if people are concerned not only about, hey, can their convention goer, if they're in their first or second or third trimester, would they feel safe in Texas? And now you have this other piece of folks, potentially having to worry about using the bathroom at the airport or at the convention center. There are real economic costs to these laws. And so I'm working with the city staff to help the city council truly understand the breadth of those things and the impact on our economic competitiveness.
Do you have to do signage or assign bathrooms or do any kind of physical changes?
Yeah, there are some. So there's some signs that the legal team has helped create to make sure that everybody understands. If you need a single stall, for example, where you might be able to find that in certain facilities. I think the concern is, the law itself is vague on implementation. However, it does allow for this kind of citizen reporting aspect, right? And if there are any kind of legal challenges, it's always because these are city facilities. It's actually not the person who you think is using the wrong restroom that you would actually file a complaint against. It's against the city. And of course, these lawsuits themselves would if it got to that point, are not cheap. Right. So it's just a real, in my mind, kind of waste of resources and time. I think at this point, though, what we want to understand is the potential economic impact.
There is talk about lowering the speed limit in residential areas in San Antonio from 30 to 25. This is being talked about as a way to make our streets safer. We have seen a lot of pedestrian deaths last year. I think the number was 83. And so the concern is that these streets are too fast and people are speeding down them. Do you think what's your position on that?
I'd like to see the data on it. I mean, of course, we're all committed to making sure our neighborhoods are as safe as possible, and pedestrian safety is a top issue. And I think there's a number of infrastructure updates that we can make. I mean, not unlike in other communities, for example. So it's not just pedestrians, it's also our bikers, right? I mean, how you configure where cars park, right? So you can have a protected lane. I think those are all things that we would be well served to look at.
You expressed concern after we had this Homeland Security raid at San Pedro and Bassi that they weren't providing you information or transparency about what they found and what happened to the people who were detained during that. We've since learned that 50 San Antonio police officers participated in that raid. So there's some concern about that. I know there's a law that says that they have to provide some assistance on there. But, if the city is providing assistance, but the city is not getting information and transparency about what happens, how do you square that?
Well, I mean, I will be going on my third request for information from the local office regarding that particular incident. But I think, it's really important as we balance public safety and public trust that there is as much transparency as possible when it comes to these immigration efforts. And frankly, ensuring that what is being said is in fact the case. When, again, American citizens that don't have a criminal background, there shouldn't be any kind of undue burden on them as a result, for example. But, this all starts with, again, making sure that there are open lines of communication, which is why I continue to ask for information, not only on that instance, but on their activities moving forward.
When we get a press release from the Homeland Security saying dozens of these people were part of the Venezuelan gang, but we don't know what that really means. And it gets repeated by media that this is what happens. But we've seen this in the past, that other people have been labeled members of gangs and they actually weren't. So we just don't need press releases. We need an opportunity to be able to examine and interrogate this information. And I don't think we've been given that opportunity. We
have not been. But we will continue to ask. I know our federal delegation also continues to make these same asks.
We've got some city council members, 3 city council members saying that they would like to see the via fares reduced to 0. We know in other cities where they have this, like Albuquerque and Kansas City, Missouri, and Chapel Hill, North Carolina, they've done this. They've seen increases in ridership, and there's some positives that come from it. Is this something that San Antonio could actually do?
I mean, potentially. I think when people look at the funding for our public transit, we are well behind other major cities. And so this is important for us as we think about our revitalized downtown, right, and walkability in general. So making sure that we are best meeting the needs for transit and public transit. And again, lots of benefits to higher ridership. Which is from the public health standpoint to the transportation piece. Now, looking at the data to see, what it actually mean in our community. Obviously, each of these things are different, but I think as much as we can help working families get to where they need to be, and frankly, there's not an hour wait between every bus. I think is also important. So getting the implementation right is important.
You're at the finish line cheering on the runners at the end of the marathon. A lot of people.
19,000 folks. Let me just say my hat's off to the whole San Antonio, Texas marathon team, SA Sports. They did a great job. Very proud of everybody that helped put that inaugural marathon together, and I look forward to many more.
All right, Mayor Gina Ortiz-Jones, thanks for coming into the studio today, taking calls, questions, and giving us an update on what's happening at City Hall. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
That's The Source on Texas Public Radio. David Martin Davies, thanks for listening.
This has been The Source on Texas Public Radio. The Source is hosted by David Martin Davies. Tim Gutierrez is the show's producer. Additional production support from Steve Short, Ruben Garcia, Yvette Benavides, and Dan Katz, Vice President of News. The Source is made possible with support from the Gladys and Ralph Lazarus Foundation.